crazy and I caused a lot of, heat on myself. But I'm not here to divide, I'm here to discuss. So let's talk. Do you think there's validity to what he's saying? Now, the issue that I personally have with these so-called experts is they state things as absolute fact instead of acknowledging it's just their perspective. I personally need more than just someone's word, but what do you think about it? Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, please consider hitting that like button. It's a small action, but it does make a massive difference. And if you want to help out a bit more with growing our Awakened family, please share this video on your own social media. But for now, stay well, stay safe, and stay curious. Until next time.